what is this thing? Okay, like, I know it is a gyroid, and I know what gyroids typically do in the Animal Crossing series, though it ranges from game to game, but like, what's actually going on here? I mean, I think most Animal Crossing fans know that they're based off of terracotta clay figures, but in the Animal Crossing universe, it varies game to game what the purpose of a gyroid is. In the first Animal Crossing game, you save your data at them. Sometimes they're furniture pieces that would be in every Animal Crossing game, and then in Animal Crossing New Horizons, they wiped all the old ones out and just introduced a bunch of brand new ones. You also talk to them for public works projects, but like sometimes they're sentient and you talk to them and have conversations with them, and other times they're just, I don't know, a fragment that you find in the ground that you have to water. The more you look into gyroids, the weirder things actually get. Why are they even called gyroids to begin with? Why do they all sell for exactly 828 bells? Why are they showing up in other games as well? The more you look into it, the weirder it gets. And this was just originally going to be a topic that I was going to include in maybe like a bigger mystery video or something like that. But honestly, there's just a lot of depth to gyroids, these weird and strange things from the Animal Crossing universe that nobody talks about. Okay, I'm sure we've all heard like they're inspired by the terracotta statues in Japan known as Hanua. And that's the level of depth anyone else goes, myself included usually, when you talk about gyroids. So what actually is there to uncover? Because there is something here. Let's take things one step at a time. Now, to best understand the gyroid, we go back to the very beginning when the gyroid was first introduced in the first ever Animal Crossing game, Generation 1 Animal Crossing. You'll see as we go on, the usage and involvement of gyroids changes and evolves over time. Back in the days before autosave, before you had an attic to go sleep in like in Wild World, if you wanted to save your game, you had your gyroid right outside of your house that was kind of in this little like cul-de-sac looking area where there was 4 houses here. Like, this is OG Animal Crossing, before you just had a house randomly in your town where you could kind of have your own place. There was like a little neighborhood specifically where the humans had to live. But this was your go-to guy for like settings and whatnot. I mean, mostly you would go there to save your game. You talk to him, save your game, boom, bam, done. He was a pretty generic NPC. I mean, I guess he's more of like an assistant. I don't even know if he would really be considered an existing character in the Animal Crossing world. But I mean, I guess he has a face and he talks, so he is a character. But in this version of Animal Crossing, there was more you could do with Gyroid besides just saving your game. You could change the design that you had posted at your front door. You could actually type a message at your door, and then if you like swapped memory cards with someone and they went to go visit your town, they would see your message posted at the door. As a kid with brothers who briefly played Animal Crossing, I thought it was cool that I could go and try to snoop on their house, but also felt like they had a secret message there that they had set up ahead of time. You could even sell items between other players that would be in your town on the same memory card, or a visiting player, I guess, and you could list an item and then you could set a price, and then if you were to like switch it over and someone came by and was like, oh look, this item's for sale for this much amount of bells, they could buy it. I don't think this feature was ever really used because, you know, there wasn't like simultaneous multiplayer back then. It was literally just you played the game. When you were done with the game, if someone else was on the same town as you on their memory card, they would like see whatever you did that day through the effects of whatever you did. So it'd be more like family members checking in, not strangers. And I feel like if you were to negotiate a deal of some sort, you would have just like dropped the bells outside their house and left the item for them and they'd pick it up the next day. But nonetheless, this was a feature. I just don't think it was used. But this version of the Gyroid's interesting because this is Gyroid the character, who actually changes his name in later Animal Crossing games, which we'll get to. And there's like a distinct split between Gyroid the character and Gyroids, the furniture items, I guess. Gyroids, on the other hand, are like furniture items that you could put inside your house. All the Gyroids have like weird noises they make, and if you've ever just sat down to watch a Gyroid make noise, it's a psychedelic experience. It also will sync movement to music that you could have set up in your house or something. And back in the day, to find gyroids, like in the wild, they would only appear in dig spots the day after it either rained or snowed. They changed things in New Horizons, but back in the early days, that's how it worked. While I still don't understand why there are mostly furniture gyroids and just one random sentient gyroid, the existence of gyroids is strange, I think. Back in the older games, there were 127 total gyroids. They were all like parts of sets, and then the sets were like related to each other, so there were like similar themes you could get for your gyroids. And back in the first gen Animal Crossing game, you could actually have like up to 14 gyroids in a single room at once. This would be adjusted in later games. I don't know why they lowered it in Wild World and City Folk. Actually, that even has its own little set of lore that I was interested in. So in the original game, 16 gyroids at the same time. Incredible. Insane. But then in Wild World, they lowered it all the way down to 4. Maybe they didn't want like too much movement at one time and it could affect gameplay performance, especially on a Nintendo DS. And maybe in an online game setting, you know, having different types of things that needs to synchronize for like other multiple players playing at the same time, maybe that was an issue. That's just speculation. City Folk, harnessing the power of the Nintendo Wii, let you have up to 8 gyroids turned on in a single room at one time. But then in New Leaf, they cut it back down again to just 4 gyroids, which is still, you know, the Wild World numbers. Maybe it's because it was on the 3DS, and the 3DS still probably wasn't as powerful as a Nintendo Wii. But man, did they cook something cursed in Animal Crossing New Horizons when they finally did add gyroids, which weren't there at launch. You could just have as many gyroids going off at once in a room. As long as you could fit them in the room, you're good to go, and boy, is this cursed. Now, since most of the original 127 gyroids would exist in every main game with the exception of New Horizons, you get familiar with looking at them. I mean, like, look at these guys. This is a Gargaloid. These names are insane, by the way. I mean, they got a mini Warbaloid, a regular Warbaloid, a tall Warbaloid, a mini Freakoid, but this one's a Mega Freakoid, and then there's like a mini Echoid. This one's a Gongoid. Oh, look, it's a Mega Poltergoid, Lamantoid, Squelchoid, Fizzoid, a Plinkoid, a Mega Crocoid. This is a Squat Dingaloid. This is a Mega Quazoid. That's not even all of them. That's literally just a small sample. And these would persist for a while, and a couple of new ones would be added. But I mean, look at this. This is crazy. Why do no Animal Crossing YouTubers talk about gyroids in depth? Actually, I could probably explain that because I'm probably the only one that would even consider making an entire video on this. Now, tell me this. Why is it that gyroids sell for exactly 828 bells in Animal Crossing? All of them. Doesn't matter which version you have, they're 828 bells. Honestly, from what I can tell here, it actually seems to just be a little subtle Easter egg to the origin of the gyroids themselves. You see in Japanese the pronunciation of 828, Hapiyaku ni Juhachi. Now obviously this is written in Romanji, what you're seeing on the screen, but in Japanese if you take the first letter of each number, the first number, Hapiyaku, which is 800, you take the ha, which comes from the number 8, the second number, Niju, which is 20, but you take the ni from that, and last but not least, you get the ha again, which if you take just those 3 parts and put them together, it's hani ha. This is really clever though, because in hiragana, which is one of the Japanese alphabets, the character ha is sometimes pronounced as wa. So if you put them together with that adjustment, it's hani wa, which are those terracotta figures we were talking about earlier. Now, of course, digging deeper into the Haniwa lore is interesting in itself if you're interested in Japanese history. They're these clay figures, essentially, right? Now, to, you know, make clay things or pottery, a lot of the times you have to use water to like mold the clay into the shape that you want before it dries. And interestingly enough, the gyroids in Animal Crossing all have something to do with water. The old games, they would only appear the day after it rained, and in the newer games, you had to literally water the spots where the gyroid fragments were found. Now, in Japanese history, Haniwa does have like a really long history of existing, but some of the earlier historical aspects of it come all the way back from like the 3rd century AD, and it seemed like some of the cylindrical types, like what we see in Animal Crossing, were originally found on top of funeral mounds. So it is possible that these were related to like funeral rituals at some point, but as they became more commonplace, they were found like outside of grave areas. So maybe they were like boundary markers of some sort. There are like theories and superstition about the Hanawa figures themselves that the soul of the deceased would reside inside of the Hanawa. And since the shapes of Hanawa and the depictions of them can vary significantly, some of them back in the day were like equipped with weapons and whatnot. It's thought that maybe like the armor and weapons were to like protect against evil spirits and, you know, protect the buried in the area. But then in later years, the shapes of Haniwa would evolve and change into more of these ghost-like looking figures, which are more commonly what we see in Animal Crossing directly. A few other things worth noting: in the original Animal Crossing game, these gyroids could only be obtained through Red's little firework festival. You could buy them just during that time in the summer, but then later on they were evolved when later Gen 1 Animal Crossing released, going to the more standard format of appearing after a rainy day. And then in the E+ version of Animal Crossing, they altered it again where you could obtain extra gyroids from Wisp. Now, going across the Animal Crossing games, the living gyroids, or at least the one that we do see in the form of this gyroid by our house in the GameCube version and N64 version, he disappears for a little while after the first game. Wild World does not have him anywhere. He is just not a character. You can still get gyroids for inside your house, but he's not like a character you talk to. However, in Animal Crossing City Folk, we see the return of the Gyroid, and he renamed himself. He went through a journey, and now he goes by Lloid instead. I'm assuming this is the same Gyroid because we haven't seen any other talking gyroids besides this guy before. And here's the thing, Lloid did have a role in City Folk. Despite the fact that nobody remembers him, he is more memorable in New Leaf and New Horizons, but in City Folk, he was in the new auction house that was next to Gracie Grace's, which I don't think anybody really used. This was like a whole system they set up where like players could bid on items, and he was just kind of like the middle person for managing that. It was like this whole thing that they tried to like set up through the online service, similar to what we saw in the first GameCube version of Animal Crossing, where you could sell things from your house with the Gyroid. It wasn't used. There were better ways of just doing trades than using the system. What the significant turning point for our Lloid friend is that he's back, and he would return in future Animal Crossing games with a much better role. In Animal Crossing New Leaf, he's kind of this like public works project manager. Essentially, he asks people for money to fund projects. Whenever you want to do like a public works project in your Animal Crossing New Leaf town, Lloid is this character that reserves the location, and then you can talk to him, and he will tell you how much money and kind of be like, yo, can you donate some money for this cause? Because this thing is not happening unless you do it. But that's not all he does in Animal Crossing New Leaf. He actually has another role where in the island area, Tortimer's Island, you can rent tools from him. He's just chilling up here, and boom, you get some tools. You can do all of your beetle hunting that you need to do, and you can make a ton of bells, and that's actually pretty useful. Also, if you did the whole dream traveling sequences where you would go to other people's dream towns, he would give you free tools that you could use as well. Also, in New Leaf, there was a couple of interesting things added in. There was like these new Brewstoids introduced, which were gyroids themed after Brewster. So we see this like affinity between Brewster and gyroids already, and you would get them by working at the coffee shop and like getting really far with that. You could unlock them. It was cool. This ends up being relevant later on. Now, Animal Crossing New Horizons has Lloid again. We'll talk about him briefly in a second, but there's a side quest we have to go on first into the world of Super Smash Brothers for 3DS and Wii U, and then Smash Bros. Ultimate as well. But in Smash 4, they introduced the villager as a playable character, and he has an attack that literally is him using like a gyroid as like a rocket-powered attack. It's a side special attack, and the further he flies, the more powerful his attacks are. Now, I don't think we've ever seen these gyroids flying across the sky in Animal Crossing, but it was cool to see something like Animal Crossing themed revolving around the Animal Crossing villager. I mean, this character has a lot of things going on related to Animal Crossing, you know, the net and whatever else he does. And they gave him the balloons, I guess because the balloons with the package that you can shoot down, and also kind of definitely a play on that balloon guy game. What was that game called again? I looked it up. Balloon Fight. And you could play Balloon Fight on the first Animal Crossing game. So we're like coming full circle here, but I mean, I thought that was a cool reference. But the gyroid, that's a cool reference too. Now here's the thing that's extra interesting. In the description of the gyroid and the villager, apparently it says that the villager makes use of a rocket-powered Lloid for his side special. So this isn't just like a gyroid you'd put in your house. This is the living, breathing, talking with his high-pitch annoying voice Lloid that we see in the games. It's not just like a furniture item that he's throwing. I thought that was interesting. Also in 2010, after the release of Animal Crossing City Folk, but before New Leaf, we do see Lloid pop up as a token in the 2010 edition of Nintendo Monopoly. Interestingly enough, his name in this is actually Gyroid, not Lloid. So maybe like Gyroid's his legal name and Lloyd's like his middle name nickname that he goes by instead. I don't know. Okay, then we get to Animal Crossing New Horizons, and gyroids are missing. Where are they? When the game came out, there weren't gyroids in the game at all, actually. They did add them in an update later on, but there was one little thing that kept the gyroid around, which was Lloid. He was still there doing the public works things. If you wanted to build a bridge, he was there. If you wanted to build stairs, he was there. But also, when you go to like the special mystery islands, you would think you would talk to Lloid again, like you did in Tortimer's Island to get extra tools, but instead you talk to Wilbur instead, who will rent you the items. So Lloyd's role has been drastically reduced. Fortunately enough, eventually New Horizons got the big free 2.0 update, and they added gyroid fragments to the game, which essentially meant the departure of all the old gyroids you remembered, and a set of new gyroids would be introduced into the game instead, except this time around, you would dig up a gyroid fragment, which you could only find usually on the Cap'n boat tours, and then you would take the gyroid fragment, bury it, water it, and then boom, you'd have a gyroid later on. Interestingly enough, the gyroid fragments sell for half of the price of a regular Gyroid would, so 414 bells, and a couple of updates after the 2.0 update, they did make it where Gyroid fragments would spawn on a beach every day with like a 30% chance. And then the whole existence of the Gyroid becomes this little side quest that you have to go to meet Brewster on a boat tour to unlock the Roost, which was something that people really wanted. It was a big deal. Brewster was back, Gyroids were back, all was good in the universe while we had that massive update and then nothing again from the game for years. And that was kind of it for Gyroids. You could customize them, which was pretty cool, something you couldn't do before. That was neat. And then Gyroids do make a small appearance in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, but actually are kind of rare overall. There are just a handful of Gyroids that have been introduced. There's 6 of them in total. The best one definitely being the Kingly Gyroidite statue. I don't know, that's just cool. But then Gyroids appear in other games as well as a reference to Animal Crossing or just a larger reference to Haniwa, but I mean, Animal Crossing's kind of what popularized this version or this aesthetic to it. Now, of course, for a long time, people have speculated that Coco somehow is related back to the Gyroids, but outside of the appearance, which does look like Haniwa in a sense, there aren't actually any real concrete connections, just appearance alone. Pretty much everything related to Coco is just like a reference to maybe like chocolate, and chocolate bunnies is already kind of a thing, and her catchphrase is like boing or something like that, which is, you know, like a boing, which is the sound of like a bounce or a jump, which is a sound that I guess a rabbit could potentially make. Not really, but you know what I'm trying to get at. I mean, a Gyroid could make that noise, but I don't think that there's like a connection. It's almost like the character was designed, maybe Haniwa was the inspiration, maybe it was designed around the same time as Gyroid, I don't know, but they never ever touched on it ever again. The only possible other connection I found is the fact that Coco's Japanese name is Yayoi, which is a reference to the Yayoi period of time, which in Japan was the same era that the Haniwa statues were most prominently created. So maybe her original inspiration was more directly a reference, but outside of that, we're just guessing. Now, we talked about Coco already, but that's not where like the weirdness of Gyroids ends. For instance, in the first Animal Crossing game, if you went and visited another town by putting another memory card in your GameCube, you visited someone else's save file, checked out their town, and then didn't save, the next time you loaded in, you would look like this. And that is absolutely terrifying. Now, this actually isn't a glitch like some people think it was. It was something programmed by Nintendo. It's intentional. I definitely thought it was a glitch for a long time, but no, this is a real deal thing that was supposed to happen. Just like a deterrent for like, hey, save your game, bud. Stop messing around. Super spooky. Something that never returned in future Animal Crossing games. But here's the interesting thing. Now, when it comes to the Animal Crossing YouTube community in a time where Animal Crossing doesn't have like a brand new game out, there's like maybe 5 of us making like informative videos, maybe if even that many. But Hunter R has a great video on the obscurities of Animal Crossing and has talked a little more in depth about this feature, which is cool. He pointed out in the official manual, there's even an acknowledgement of this happening. But one thing that's extra interesting is a discovery in the original Animal Forest game for the Nintendo 64 in Japan only, where you can access the debug menu world, kind of like the special programming world. And there's this weird Gyroid that exists there. And he has a long list of dialogue that's said here.
And I say you can talk to it. This one does not shut up.
This dude talks, and Hunter teamed up with someone and they translated it. And go check out Hunter's video if you want to know more about the interesting stuff of the OG Animal Crossing game. But I mean, I don't know. It's just this whole debug world's always been really fascinating to me. There also was another Gyroid in the debug area, but this one, like, its textures are all messed up and he doesn't say anything. So I also thought that was interesting. But man, the Gyroid lore runs deep here. There are still more instances of Gyroids popping up from time to time. Like, for instance, in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, there was a mini game that you could play. It was called Shovel Strike Quarry, and this game was actually hosted by none other than Lloid. It's like his one role. I mean, he does more than just a mini game, but I mean, this was his like big claim to fame in Pocket Camp. It wasn't that interesting. It's basically just an exciting rock breaking game, nothing crazy. But you know, after Super Smash Bros. Ultimate came out on the Switch and they added Isabelle as a playable character, Isabelle, while she's mostly a clone of the villager from Super Smash Bros. 4, does also have a Gyroid or Lloid pop up. This time it's like an up rocket attack. But look, another appearance of Lloid or a Gyroid. Okay, then of course there are a few other references to Gyroids in other games, but I think for the most part when Gyroids show up in other games, it's mostly circling back to Animal Crossing, not necessarily Haniwa. I mean, I'm sure Haniwa do exist in other games, but for what we're talking about here, these are more likely direct references to Animal Crossing. Like for instance, in the old Game Boy Advance game, WarioWare Twisted, there is a micro game called Gyroid Jumble, which is under the Dribble and Spits micro games. It's just a basic like matching game, and there's like different face variations, and you gotta like quickly line things up. Pretty basic, but hey, this game came out in like 2004, 2005. This was after Animal Crossing was now a thing. So it's cool to see like a reference to Animal Crossing in a way coming out of the Game Boy Advance era, since there's only really one Animal Crossing game at this point. Wild World was still like on its way. But yeah, this game was called Gyroid Jumble, which is a reference directly to Gyroids for Animal Crossing. So definitely an Animal Crossing reference and not just like a Haniwa reference. Similarly, if we look to Pikmin 2, there was a treasure known as a Gyroid bust. It looks more probably like a Haniwa, but I mean, it's called a Gyroid from, you know, the naming sake from the Animal Crossing games, except in the Japanese version where it actually has the name Mr. Hani. So maybe this one's like a half point. I think the localization teams decided to make it an Animal Crossing reference, where the original Japanese team wanted to keep it as like just a, you know, traditional Japanese reference. This does beg the question though, could it be possible that the Gyroids existed in the Pikmin 2 universe? Does this mean Animal Crossing is like a prequel to Pikmin 2? Could Animal Crossing be some prehistoric land, and after the extinction happened, Pikmin is like the post-apocalyptic version of it? Probably not. But, you know, you gotta ask the question at least once in your life. I don't know, this was kind of fun doing a deep dive into the Gyroids, just a very specific thing in Animal Crossing that you look into it, and then there's a ton of things about it. If you liked this video and you want to see more stuff like this, maybe consider subscribing, especially if you're watching on TV or like on a non-computer or phone device. I know it takes like 2 more seconds, but that helps a lot. Also, if you're on a phone watching this, you should still subscribe too. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you soon with a new video.